Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Let's go over the most important stimulus news that you want to know. Now, Biden has weighed in on the Labor Department that shows the Consumer Price Index, which measures the prices consumers pay for a market basket of goods.
Last month, the biggest spike since 1982, 6.8 over the past year, we should say. Jared Bernstein's member of the White House Council of Economic Advisors.
Because when you think about what's going on out there, one of the first things you think about is the tightest job market in decades. I mean, yesterday we learned that unemployment insurance claims were the lowest they've been since 1969, which I remember the topping the charts at that point was a song called Honky Tonk Women by the Rolling Stones. So that's how far back you have to go to get such good results on the job market. On the price side, though, and the president said this yesterday, we have to deal with the job side of the economy, which is booming, and the price side of the economy where there are considerable price pressures, and he has detailed us to work relentlessly to do everything we can to ameliorate those pressures. Now, as you reported in November, we learned that the monthly rate of the CPI was up 0.8%. That's a tick down from October when it was 0.9, but year over year, as you've said, elevated prices, and that's why we are doing everything we can to get to the root of this, to ameliorate some of the snarls in the supply chains, to help make sure that American family budgets are able to keep up with these dynamics. One of the things we like to point out, though, in that regard, is that if you actually look at people's incomes, they're about $100 per month above where they were a year ago, and that has a lot to do with both the strong labor market and many of the relief measures that this president has signed into law.
Biden told reporters, it matters to people when you're paying more for gas. Although in some states we've got the price down, but the point is it's not going down quickly enough, but I think it will. Now, Biden's talking about inflation at its fastest rate in nearly 40 years. Now, the White House did acknowledge that Americans' wallets are taking a hit, but that the increased prices will not last forever. The Biden administration also used the new numbers as an opportunity to tout the Build Back Better spending bill. But amid higher prices, the president pointed to his social agenda as a way to bring down the cost of childcare and other expenses. And when asked about how to get holdout Joe Manchin on board giving his concerns about inflation, Biden said he would be speaking with the senator early next week, but once again stressed his plan would help combat rising prices and not add to them. Nancy Pelosi has predicted that both chambers of Congress will pass a $2 trillion expansion of social benefits and climate programs. That's a massive package at the heart of President Biden's domestic agenda before Christmas. Pelosi told reporters in the Capitol, "We feel very confident about what is in the Build Back Better, and we know what some possibilities are. And it would be my hope that we would have this bill done before the Christmas vacation." So do you believe that President Biden, the Democrats, and the Republicans can get the job done and send out the stimulus payments before the end of the year? Tell me what you think, everybody, in the comments. The American Rescue Plan Act authorized a lot of money to be sent to the American people in various ways. When Biden signed the bill into law in March, $1,400 payments were sent directly to most people. The bill also delivered money to people suffering from the economic effects of the crisis. One of the things the bill did was to expand the child tax credit and make the first half of the credit payable directly to families. As of right now, the payment coming on December 15th is the last check that families will get. Families will receive a direct deposit or a check for each child. The amount of money will depend on how old the child is and how much money you earn. Some parents will get $300 for each child under 6 years old and $250 for each child between 6 and 17. Now, there are limits as to who can get the money. Individuals making $75,000 or less, or married couples filing jointly who make $150,000 or less will get the full amount. The total amount of the tax credit is $3,600 for children under 6 and $3,000 for children ages 6 to 17. When this payment arrives, people will receive exactly half that amount. The second half of the expanded child tax credit will be coming when people file their taxes in 2022. People who don't normally file a tax return are still eligible to receive this tax credit, but they may be too late to get a payment in December. But they can get the full amount by notifying the IRS in 2022 if they qualify. Some people will be getting the full half of the credit when the money comes next week, and people who had not been receiving the payments for the previous 5 months, but who chose and qualified for the December payment will get the money all at once. In order to receive the payment from the previous months, people would have to notify the IRS by November 15th. Thank you again for your support, everybody. If you have any more questions about the fourth stimulus checks, leave them in the comments below. I truly appreciate everybody's amazing support.
Recognized. President, I appreciate the comments of my colleague from Indiana. One thing he didn't have under that Christmas tree or in the stocking was a lump of coal, because I guess the lump of coal is not something we find in the Build Back Better, even though there's a lot of stuff in there that is really bad for our economy right now, bad for our families, bad for our workers. And when you think about it, right now we're at a time of high inflation, supply chain difficulties, record levels of debt and deficit, and an uncertain economy due largely to the uncertainty regarding COVID, and particularly this new variant, the Omicron. So this is not a time for us to be putting forth a massive new spending bill and a massive new tax increase on the American economy. In fact, it's a time for us to retrench a little bit and try to help to get back to where we were before COVID-19. Remember, that was a time when, after the 2017 tax reforms, we had a great economy by any measure, and it was an opportunity economy, the lowest poverty rate in the history of our country since we started keeping track in the 1950s. As of February, just before going into the COVID-19 period, February 2020, we had 19 straight months of wage gains of over 3%. By the way, that was over inflation because inflation was so low. So people were feeling it. They were actually getting a wage increase. And in my state of Ohio, that was the first time in probably a decade and a half. Now it's just the opposite. Wages are actually down when you take inflation into account. And inflation is high, as everyone feared, because we've dumped so much on the demand side of the economy, and the supply side is restricted, in part because of what's happening with COVID, and it creates this inflation. This was warned by not just Republicans like myself, but back in March, when President Biden and Democrats put $1.9 trillion into this economy, the most ever, the biggest bill ever, it was Larry Summers, former Secretary of the Treasury under President Clinton, NEC, National Economic Council chair under President Obama, who said, you know, this is going to stoke inflation. It's going to overheat the economy. It's exactly what it did. So we have this high inflation. We have this record levels of debt and deficit. We're talking about extending the debt limit right now, and people think the number is going to be, just to extend it for about a year, over $2 trillion, meaning that we're spending so much more than we're taking in. And yet there's this discussion that somehow before Christmas, we're going to put forward this Build Back Better legislation that was just talked about. It's not building back America better. Unfortunately, it's building us worse off than we were, and adding to inflation, adding to the supply chain difficulties, adding to the debt and deficits at record levels, and certainly doing nothing with regard to COVID-19. So why would we do this? And certainly, why would we do this now? It makes no sense.